the Big Easy Chef here. This time, we're going to be making whole wheat bread. Now this bread isn't 100% whole wheat, but if you're looking for a healthier bread and you just can't do the 100% whole wheat thing, then this bread is for you. This bread has the benefits of whole wheat bread without the strong wheat flavor, and it has the texture of white bread. It's a perfect everyday bread. It's easy to make. This bread makes the best sandwiches and makes perfect toast. Let's not waste any more time. Why don't you and I run into that kitchen and see what's a-shaking and get to baking. We're going to be making 2 loaves of this whole wheat bread today. Okay, here's a tip. Start with rinsing your mixing bowl with some warm water. This will keep your ingredients nice and warm. You just want to warm up the bowl a little. Take off the chill. Okay, add 2 3/4 cups of warm water at 110 degrees. You can check the temperature of the water using a thermometer or by checking it with your finger. You want the water to just be warm to the touch. Now to your warm water, add 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast. 1/3 cup of light brown sugar. Now you could use white sugar or honey. You would still need 1/3 of a cup. Next, add 1/3 cup of non-fat powdered dry milk. Next up is 1/2 cup of vital wheat gluten. Okay, now a word about gluten. I think gluten gets a bad rap. If you have celiac disease, you shouldn't be eating gluten. However, if you don't have celiac disease, then gluten is a good thing, as it's loaded with non-animal protein. Gluten is made from wheat. Gluten helps to make your bread rise, and it makes the bread nice and fluffy. If you're unsure if you should be eating gluten, check with your doctor to see if gluten is okay for you. Now add in 1/2 cup of wheat bran. The wheat bran is going to give a healthy texture and look to your bread. Now for the whole wheat flour. We're going to add in 2 1/2 cups. Okay, now for that white flour. Add in 3 cups of white bread flour. Add in 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. Now if you want it to go more healthy, you could use olive oil in place of the butter. You would still need 1/2 cup. Now pour in 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. The vinegar is going to take the whole wheat flavor out of the bread, so it isn't strong with that wheat flavor. Now you want to dump in 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Okay, now with all of those ingredients in the mixing bowl, using the dough hook on the mixer, turn the mixer onto low speed. Mix the ingredients for 12 minutes. This will get all of the ingredients mixed together. After 5 minutes of mixing, check the dough. Look to see if you need more flour or water. Make any necessary adjustments. Be careful not to add too much water or flour to the dough. Use small amounts to make changes. This dough is perfect. It doesn't need any adjustments. The perfect dough pulls away from the sides of the mixing bowl and forms a ball of dough on the hook. So if your dough is close to this, then it doesn't need any adjustments. You can see how the dough is looking at this point. It isn't sticking to the sides of the mixing bowl and has formed a nice ball on the dough hook. So this is what your dough should look like. You could knead this bread by hand. It should be kneaded for 20 to 25 minutes. Now, if you don't know how to knead dough by hand, I've linked a video. This video is for 100% whole wheat bread. In the video, I knead the dough by hand. Look in the description box below for the link. Now that the 12 minutes have passed, remove the dough hook from the mixer. You can see how the dough slides out of the dough hook. It just slides out, not leaving any dough behind. We've just made the perfect dough. Okay, now with your dough kneaded, we're going to cover this dough with a towel. You can spray the top of the dough with some cooking spray or give the top a light coat of olive oil. I never do, and the dough comes out perfect. So let the dough set and rise for about 1 hour. You'll need to set the dough in a warm, draft-free place. The top of the stove is a good place, as is the top of the refrigerator, or any warm, draft-free place that you may have. The dough will double in size, say in about 1 hour or so. We'll be checking on it often, say after 45 minutes, and then every 15 minutes, until you see the dough has risen enough. Okay, now this dough took an hour to rise. You can see the wheat bran in the dough. It's going to give our bread that healthy look. Oh, and it's going to make our bread healthy. A good way to tell if the dough has risen long enough is to poke the dough. If it springs right back, then the dough hasn't risen enough. If it stays poked in and wants to collapse onto its own self, then it has risen and it's ready for the next step. Now take your dough and dump it out of the bowl onto a breadboard, a countertop, or just any clean, hard, workable surface. Divide the dough into half. Place one half aside for now. Have a little whole wheat flour ready to use in case the dough starts sticking to the surface. And then just add a light dusting of the whole wheat flour. However, we're not going to be working the dough that much at all. With the first half of the dough, you want to flatten out the dough. I like using my knuckles for this job. You could use a rolling pin. Using a rolling pin will get a nicer looking loaf. Get the dough about as long as your loaf pan. Then roll up the dough and tuck the ends under. Spray your 9x5 loaf pan with some non-stick cooking spray. You could use butter or olive oil. Make sure to coat the bottom and sides. Place the dough in a loaf pan. Push the dough down to cover the bottom of the pan. You can use your fingers or knuckles, just as long as the dough is flattened out on the bottom of the pan. Cover the pan with a towel and place in your warm spot. Repeat this process with the second loaf of dough. We need to allow this dough to rise for about 1 hour. It could be sooner. It just depends where you place the dough and how warm it is. So say in about 45 minutes, start checking on your dough. When the dough is doubled in size, just where it's risen over the top of the pan, you can see how this dough is looking, just like an unbaked loaf of bread. This is the time to bake your bread. Spray the top of the loaves with some cooking spray, or lightly brush the tops with some melted butter or olive oil. Place the 2 loaves of bread in a preheated 350-degree Fahrenheit oven and set the pans in the middle of the oven. We're going to be baking this bread for 35 minutes. Okay, now it's been 35 minutes and this bread came out perfect. It looks great and it smells just like fresh baked bread. Dump out the bread from your loaf pans and place on a rack. Okay, now you see one loaf doesn't look that pretty on the sides, but it isn't going to affect the taste one bit. Allow the bread to cool for at least 1 hour before slicing. 2 hours is a better idea. But you know, sometimes it's hard to wait the 2 hours when you have this great fresh baked bread setting in front of you. I like to slice this bread with an electric knife and use this guide. I will place links for the knife and bread slicing guide in the description box below, so check it out. Jumbo size Ziploc bags work perfect for storing this bread or freezing the bread. Just make sure the bread is completely cool before putting the bread in the bag. This bread also freezes up very good and comes in handy when you want some great homemade bread. Okay, so there you have it. Now you can bake this whole wheat bread and know you're eating something somewhat healthy. You can call Mr. Orwheat and tell him he's toast. This recipe makes great everyday bread for sandwiches, toast, you name it, and this will be your go-to bread. For a free printable recipe and instructions, I placed a link in the description box below, so check it out. You can also find more free printable recipes, instructions, and videos at my website, thebigeasychef.com, so check it out. Okay, so now we have this perfect slice of whole wheat bread, so you know what time it is. It's time to dig in. Oh, what about that perfect slice of whole wheat toast? It's time to dig in. Remember what they say, you are what you eat, so eat healthy. Until next time, I am the Big Easy Chef.